Hello and welcome to Fit Conversations. I'm Anthony Payton, your host, and tonight we have an outstanding show. As we do each week, we have a local gentleman that is doing some awesome things in the community, and I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself. Go head on, Doc.
What's going on? My name is Kibwe Cooper. I'm the founder and host of Empower You Podcast. Empower You Podcast is all about self-development, real-world wisdom, and encouragement. We talk about a multitude of topics from a variety of perspectives, cultural, economic, and societal. And we air every week, and we've been blessed to have over 87 episodes, thousands of listeners, and downloads and impressions around the world, 47 different countries, or 47 different states, 7 different countries.
Wow.
We're just taking it one day at a time. So I'm really excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your stage. You are just like one of the goats of town, man. Seriously, your vision and the way that you move throughout the city and throughout various environments is just really inspiring. So I'm grateful to be here.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I'm grateful that you're here. I have a huge amount of respect for you and respect for your gift and your heart. And we've been chopping it up for how many months now?
Oh, man.
About 6, 7, 8 months or something like that, maybe 8 months. I had an opportunity to be on your podcast for the first time.
Yes, sir.
And it was outstanding. And prior to that, to be honest with you, I had virtually zero idea of what podcasting was all about.
Really?
I mean, I had seen it, I've listened to a few, but understanding the structure and the implications from helping people and the need and seeing it as a ministry and all those things, I didn't understand it until we got an opportunity to talk. You know, and after then I said, oh, this is what this is about, you know.
Yes, sir.
And man, it's just awesome. How did you get into it?
So I've been an audio engineer for about 10 years now. So went to St. Francis University, came out and started doing audio video production for companies regionally, but then also locally as well. And so I've always been doing audio in that way. And so it was probably maybe the fall before the pandemic, so maybe 2018, where I had been really considering starting some kind of a podcast because you know, I had listened to podcasts and I understood what they were, but I also didn't see anybody locally doing any of that. And I thought that was really interesting. And at first I was like, well, you know, if no one's doing it already, there's probably not very much interest for it. But then I realized that I wanted to do a podcast for more than just who would be interested locally. I realized that one of the missing components in my life that it caused me to struggle in different ways or to have experienced different challenges was my lack of mentorship. And so what I realized was that by creating a podcast, I could do something that was low impact on me, right? So I don't have a whole lot of work. Mind you, like I'm blessed because I already understand this
you
format.
understand the system, the process.
So if you don't do audio or anything like this might be a little bit different for you. But for me, I realized this was something I could do consistently and I could do on a high level and deliver something to other young Black boys and girls from Gary, from other places around the world who, like me, needed more mentorship coming up, who needed somebody to kind of show them a way, and I didn't have access. And so my whole goal was to interview the smartest, brightest people I could get on the Zoom or on wherever I could in order to start to develop a platform where people could receive mentorship and they could receive encouragement and real perspectives, not perspectives with an agenda, right? Like there's no agenda on Empower You Podcast. It's the whole desire of the entire show is to give you a leg up, give the listener a leg up. Because when you go to academic environments, they want you to take certain classes. When you go to job environments, they want you to do specific things because it works for them. Where at Empower You Podcast, we strictly talk about, you know, what worked for the guest and what they would advise someone else do, especially as times continue to change. And so that's where the whole idea came from. It's just my desire to put something out that was low impact for me, that I could do consistently without getting in the way of some of my other gigs. And so that's where that dream was born. And then pandemic happens. And I was like, oh, well, good thing I already had this idea, you know?
Wow.
And so that just completely opened everything else up. And then obviously things erupted in the city with the social unrest after the murder of George Floyd. I started doing some speaking and things like that. I went to Columbia City and did some other speaking here in town. And I realized that yet again, in order for me to be a part of someone else's stage, be a part of someone else's program, I gotta pitch their agenda. And so, I realized that, this is confirmation for me that I really have to focus on creating an environment where I don't have to pitch anybody else's agenda.
One of the things that fascinates me about the pandemic is, and I said this last guest we had last week, I said, and you and I talked about this, I shared this with you, I think that the creatives, the creative people in our churches, in our community are the new superheroes.
That's right.
The pandemic forced, particularly churches, us to get outside of our comfort zone, get outside of that space where we was accustomed to people being in the building, and we're preaching to 500, 600, or however many members you have, and that was it.
Yeah.
The pandemic says, okay, what you going to do now that people can't come in the building? How are you still going to minister? And an unfortunate thing is that many were not prepared for it. And what you offer, what was kind of organic for you, your desire to help people in general, has now become a business.
Absolutely.
For you.
Absolutely.
And I listen to your podcast and I'm saying, oh man, I never do this. I just might as well hire him and not try to do all that, but because the information, I like the pragmatic approach. I'm not so much a theoretical person. Can you put that in the shoe leather? Yeah. Can you put the cookies on the bottom shelf so I can get them? Because I'm not an audio engineer. Yeah. I do understand some things. I know when it sounds right, but I may not know how you got it right.
Right.
So I like that approach. And it's men and women like you in our community and outside the boundaries of this community, Mayberry, USA, that many churches across every spectrum have overlooked.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Have literally overlooked. And so when this pandemic happened, the people that could help us minister in the midst of it, that had the technical expertise, the lighting and all that kind of stuff, was already there, but we ignored them so long. And so we didn't have no way of pulling them back in because by now they were doing their own podcast.
Yep. Ain't that a shame though?
How do we engage your group of people, your age group, back into the church using your gifts? I'm getting ready to do a series on Gifted for More. What does it take to engage you?
So, first of all, that's a great question. Okay. Engagement is a really, really good word because I don't think, at least to me, in my millennialness, I'm not looking to just be a part of something.
Gotcha.
I'm looking to be engaged in something.
Gotcha.
And what is engaging is vision.
Yeah.
What is engaging is an idea that someone has for you or your community or something that you're a part of that is liberating and that is equitable to the other people involved, that doesn't just serve one party. Because as society continues to grow and develop, the lines are getting blurrier and blurrier, right? We live in a very reactionary society, but the truth is, it's kind of weird because the reality is so many people exist in gray spaces. Just think about years ago, you definitely had to go to college if you were going to get a good job, or you had to go to some factory and take that route.
Yeah.
Now, You could literally be a millionaire from your couch making YouTube videos, making podcasts, doing video editing or graphics work right from your home, no matter where you are. But what is not given is vision on how to make that happen. You see a lot of ads, you see a lot of people who have cliff notes, but when you want to engage, I would say millennials and even people, even Gen Xers, based off of Gen Z, based off of what I have seen, it's vision. It's how does this impact other people as well? What am I really buying into? When I'm listening to you teach, what are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me to get into a box, or are you trying to tell me to become as big and as glorious as I possibly can be because I'm meant to do something for other people?
Wow.
So what's missing, I think, in a lot of traditional churches, and I don't, and I come from a very traditional church. I'm not trying to, thumbs down anybody, but my perspective is just that, what are we sowing into? I don't want to just do the same old, same old. I grew up with that. And while I love the people who I grew up with and the congregation I grew up in and all this other kind of stuff, I was never inspired by any of it. And that's not a God thing.
Yeah.
That's a vision thing.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that you said that, because I like Barna and Barna Research Group, and I've been following some of their studies during the pandemic and some of the outcomes that they have come up with concerning this last 2.5 years, and churches across the board, predominantly black, predominantly white, et cetera, mainline, evangelicals, et cetera. And one of the things they discovered is that millennials, your age, your generation, initially were tuning in to services in the church. They were engaged. So I chose that word very, very, very purposely. And soon after they stopped, and they've discovered there are several reasons why they stopped. One, it wasn't professional enough. When you got a 7-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old sitting on the couch and he can produce videos that looks like he's in a studio somewhere, and you're standing over here preaching and the camera's over there, it's, oh man, I ain't got time for this. And it don't take them long to make that decision that I'm not going to be watching this long. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that it was too professional. So it didn't have that organic feel. It felt like a Hollywood script, movie. And they didn't think that was...
It's a little plastic.
Yeah, they didn't think that was church, that wasn't faith-based, because it was too flawless, It was
in a stadium full of people.
Exactly. So they stopped tuning in for that reason. The third reason is what you alluded to. The third reason was that they were not asked to be a part of anything. When you're sitting at home and you're in the pandemic and you're doing things, what can you do? This was the outcome. How can you ask them to be a part of something, even though you may not be able to gather in the building? And our paradigm as a church was gathering in the building. And so what you did was in the building. And so the pandemic says, okay, you can't go to the building. How are you going to engage these young people into that? And when I read that, one of the things that I initially did, I started deliberately saying this statement after every service. And when we were feeding a lot of people through our partnerships in the city, I started saying this. You don't have to be a part of our church to come and help us pass out food to people in the community. It's safe, you'll have gloves, and we're gonna just put food in their trunk and car, and you don't have to be a member, you can come. And people start coming that was not members. Because they were engaged. They was asked to be a part of something.
That's right.
There's a story about Abraham Lincoln during the height of the Civil War. He was visiting the church there in D.C., and it was a church that he had visited before, and this particular time, the stress of the war was on him, and so he went to the church to try to find solace. And his aide accompanied him there, and he sat through the service, and then he walked out the same door, which was the back door, because of who he was. He just eased out of the back door. And his aide said, "Mr. President, did you enjoy the service?" And he said it was a well thought out sermon. He said, Mr. President, did you really enjoy the sermon? He said, it was a very passionately delivered sermon. He said, Mr. President, did you enjoy the sermon? And he said, no, because it did not ask of us anything great. And that's the missing ingredient. That is what you alluded to.
Yeah.
The vision.
Yeah.
That compels me, that asks me to be a part of something great, where I don't mind sacrificing for this because this is great.
Absolutely.
This touches my community. This touches beyond the community, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, that's what we're trying to, as a church, to understand, that this current generation is not my mother's generation. They're not looking to sing a couple of hymns and go home. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I think there has to be that mixture.
Yep.
But they want to know, are you going to ask me to be a part of something great?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and it reminds me of that scripture where I want to say it was Jesus, maybe it was someone else who said, I became all things to all people. And so I think that's one of the things that the church is missing. I don't think some churches want to be all things to all people. And that doesn't mean you become so entrenched in culture that you're ineffective. That just means you understand that, you know, we serve a big God. God is huge, and he represents himself in different cultures, different ways. Same spirit. You know, if you look at, and because I'm kind of I like to say like I'm a self-development junkie. Like I like to listen and learn from a lot of different types of perspectives. And what I notice is that a lot of them come back to the same principles of meditation, of prayer, of some type of reflection, of having an awareness of something bigger than yourself, of knowing that you are not the body that you walk around in every day. You're a part of a huge universe, a huge microcosm of beings designed to do certain things. And so what I think, you know, is kind of counterproductive for the church is the limiting factors, the limiting, and I'm not talking about standards, I'm talking about limits. Standards and limits are completely different things. And so I think because, you know, certain churches have so much emphasis on all these limits, it makes it difficult to really express yourself. Because I know for me coming up, I got to a certain point, and I think I am now in certain ways, where I'm like, there are certain things I just can't be a part of. I love, you know, what you all are doing, but I can't allow myself to go back into the shell. You know, God has created me to do specific things, and they're bigger than what you're talking about. And I can't negate what God has done for me already to make you comfortable by closing down.
Yeah. I wrote something. I journal a lot. We talked about that. Yeah. And I wrote something in my journal a couple of days ago, and I also posted. And I said, okay, it goes like this. I'm paraphrasing. I was saved by an extraordinary God, through an extraordinary grace, through an extraordinary mercy, and through an extraordinary act of forgiveness. And you want me to live an ordinary life so that you can feel comfortable around me? That is the heart of that mediocre approach to life, you know. And I think when Christ comes in, he says, okay, kick off the doors, take the doors off, you know, get me out of the box, take me out of the circle, etc. I think it's Psalm 73. In Psalm 73, the psalmist says that the children of Israel, they put God, they limited, that's the word, they limited the God of Israel. The Hebrew word there for limited is that they put God in a box. So he could not do what he wanted to do on their behalf. Because they put him in a box, you know. And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't think that I don't want anything to do with that kind of paradigm when it comes to living my Christian faith. Let me share this with you. This is some studies that they did, that Barner put out concerning the desire to develop gifts. Gen Xers, 69% of Gen Xers says they have a desire to develop their gift. Millennial generation says 56% said they have a desire to develop their gift. Gen X's 46% said that they have a desire, and Boomers 28% they said they had a desire. Now, what's fascinating to me about this data is this: when they ask pastors what their view of giftedness in the church, the people in the church, and the gifts, the various gifts they have in the church, how do they view helping people discover their gifts? Is it an important priority of the church? Is helping people discover their gift an important priority of the church?
Okay.
Only 38% said it was. Then it says, in our churches, people's gifts are often celebrated. In other words, do you celebrate the gifts that are in the church? Only 24% say they celebrate the gifts. And the churches are gifted, the gifts that are used outside the context of the church. Do you celebrate the gifts that are used within the community? Only 17% say they even celebrate the gifts that are used in the community of the members that are in the church.
Listen.
And then they ask, do you have a good sense of feel concerning the gifts that are in your congregation? Only 16% say, I know the gifts that are in my congregation.
I think that data speaks volumes.
Volumes.
Because I'm just a body here, and I'm supposed to follow you to boost your ego because you believe that your gift is the most important thing that any of us have to offer.
Yeah, and that's a lot to unpack. That's a lot to unpack.
That's psychological.
Yeah, that's a lot
right
to unpack
there.
because, there's sometimes where, just the intimidation factor becomes an issue why I do not celebrate gifts, or there's some gifts that I feel like if I give you too much play, that you're going to take something from me. And that's a trick of the enemy, I believe.
That's scarcity mindset.
Yeah, and God has given a diversity of gifts to the body in order that for his agenda, his kingdom to come, his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. One of the things that they discovered in this study, and Barner alludes to, is that in addition to the spiritual gifts that are part of the church, that Peter talks about, that Paul talks about in Scripture, New Testament, they looked at the technical gifts that are in the body, and the arts that's in the body. Now, I find that very fascinating because there's this prophetic approach to those subjects. It's called the Seven Mountains book out. And they talk about the 7 mountains in terms of the 7 strategic places that they believe God was moving his people to occupy. And one of them is media. Another is art. And you would have to be blind, socially speaking, not to see that happening before our very eyes, that God is positioning men like you who understand podcasting and see that as not only an opportunity for people to listen and tune in for development, but also a ministry.
Absolutely.
How do pastors, if I would say, okay, I want to hire you. I want you to come in and develop a podcast for me. What would be your approach to that?
If you wanted to contact me, you'd simply just go to www.workwithkibwecooper.com, and there's actually free resources there, case study video where I can actually explain to you before you ever need to reach out to me what I do, and then how I do it. And so you would go ahead and use that video, and then you can decide for yourself if you want to schedule a free strategy session where we can kind of talk about some of your challenges and decide if you're a good fit for my program or you're a good fit for what I do for organizations. And so that's where I would say you want to start. Again, it's not I don't want to work with organizations that I don't really feel like I can help. And so this allows me to, one, give you as much value as possible before we need to do anything else. So that's the first step I would go to, www.workwithkibwecooper.com. That's the first step. And then beyond that, you can check out Empower You Podcast. You can watch the content that I create and the form in which it comes out and decide if you like that. You can also go to my Instagram page or my Facebook page, which is the Guru Guide to Podcasting, where I just talk about some of the behind the scenes things that we constantly need to be thinking about. And I just try to break things down as simply as possible, because what you said is really important. You know, it's more than just, or the way I view podcasting is more than just a fad or a trend. You know, human beings are microdosing information. They're microdosing theology. They're microdosing financial literacy. And so the way to reach more people is to allow them to microdose valuable, insightful content that will help them start to implement changes in their lives.
Now you need to break that down, because everybody out here does not understand that concept. So break that down, microdosing. Explain that. Put the cookies on the bottom shelf.
All right. Here we go. So here's what I would say about microdosing content. You have a sermon, right? You just talked about the 7 mountains. Each one of those mountains is a piece of content by itself. The definition of each one of those mountains is a concept all by itself. The execution of those mountains is each a concept, a piece of content all by itself. And every one of those pieces affect the rest of your life. And so by breaking those things down and taking time, not shoving all this theology at somebody, not telling somebody today you got to do this, you got to do that, because the reality is there is no time, right? We have come up with the structure of time and everything else. Everything else just moves in cycles. And the cycle that someone else might be in is maybe not the cycle where you want them to even be a part of your church just yet. Maybe you just need them to understand that the moments in their life that they're spending in a way that is counterproductive is limiting their gifts. That's just one little piece of content. That's gonna start a seed, right?
So it's basically, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
That's right.
And small bites at that.
It's indoctrination, slowly, and at will.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but when I find something really interesting online, I go down the rabbit hole. In 30-second, 60-second increments.
Yeah, I've been there. My wife said, "What are you doing?"
And that's what I think churches got to understand, that, you know, the traditional ways that I think, at least I grew up taking in spiritual, theological content has changed. And that's because the people you're trying to reach, they have changed. And so in order to reach them, you have to modify your approach. You have to modify the way that you speak to them, and you have to do it in smaller contents. I'm not saying don't preach on Sunday, but what I'm saying is take more time to explain things and put the cookies on the bottom shelf.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Now you sound like me. Because I think that the attention span and the way people today intake information, I may preach an hour on a Sunday, but I'm a teaching approach to preaching, which is not just
hellfire and brimstone, everybody
I want you to understand the truth of it. Nehemiah talks about, in the book of Nehemiah, that Ezra gave the sense of the text. That's where the whole concept of expository preaching comes from. Ezra gave the sense. It wasn't just, giving the highlights, but he unpacked it, and so that people could grab it and run with it. And so I take that approach. That's my gift. I used to be intimidated by others who had more traditional African-American approach to preaching than I did, until I accepted and took ownership of my gift, appreciated and valued theirs, but also did the same for mine. But what I've discovered, even in my approach from a teaching perspective, that there is a need for me by Tuesday to take something from what I said Sunday and repost it.
That's right.
In that environment.
That's right.
That the people are tuned into.
That's right.
And so I get up earlier than I used to, and I try to develop stuff early, get it all done. You taught me this.
Yes, sir.
Get it all done early, and then practically throughout the day, push it out there so that people are getting reinforced. What's the best teacher? Repetition is the best teacher.
Right.
How you get it back to them, et cetera.
That's
so we started doing a whole different approach to that, even putting my PowerPoints online before service so they could get them. And then the men's meeting, we put the PowerPoints online so that they could get them, and we have a men's meeting every second and fourth Saturday so they can get them and go over. So we try to make the information readily available so it's less a lecture and more of a journey.
Absolutely.
Of discovery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to apply knowledge, and that implementation takes time and it takes commitment. And when you're able to do things in smaller doses, or like you say, in the way that you're teaching people, it allows for, at least in my opinion, it allows you to put your guard down a little bit. You're more vulnerable to the information because you understand the framework it's coming in. You understand how in today's world, not in Bible talk in the King James Version, like I understand all of that, but I live today. How does this affect me today? Even the talk of being involved in media and all these other kind of things is kind of taboo in certain environments because everything that's not church is written off as worldly.
You're absolutely right.
And so
in many contexts it is.
And I think that's a problem. I think you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not saying you got to just do whatever culture says. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, we live in an environment where if we want to help people, we have to be committed to helping people, not just doing things our way.
I try to, I've said this before, and the people at Kayak know, I don't necessarily like rap music, but there are certain rappers that I'll listen to. And I listen to them because I think their thumb is on the pulse, or their fingers on the pulse of that age group. You might not like the way they tell their story, but it's still their story.
Absolutely.
And so I was quoting one and a rapper, Nipsey Hussle, where he talks about talks about dedication, no hesitation, dedication.
That's right.
A blue pill in the Matrix,
that's
dedication.
That's right. Ooh, you better talk it. You better talk it.
And I quoted that. And one of my members had to say to the person in the audience that didn't know me, yeah, he's saved. He is saved, because that's a generation that I got to connect with.
Absolutely.
Now,
and where do you think he got that insight from?
Tell me, Doc.
He got it from God.
Yes.
How many times did God save his life?
Yeah.
You think you get to that level of accomplishment and you don't know? Because we write off people who are wealthy as just being the worst. But sometimes you got to understand that God is everywhere. He's not just in your church. He was there to help him get out of prison. He's there to help other people get through tumultuous situations that they write books and things about. He created albums, and he created a method that would free artists from the bondage that they've been in through
deals that was unhealthy for them financially.
And how's that going to affect gospel artists? How's that going to affect the church? Because now we understand that we
blueprint. Can control our own content.
So, but we don't throw him out with the bathwater. See, this is where I have issues with sometimes the traditional approaches that we take to our faith. And so that's one of the reasons why I applaud you. So, funny story, the reason I wanted you to be a part of my podcast was because during the riots and all that other kind of stuff, right? There was a lot of commotion, and I think this was the Desmond Tutu event when his daughter was in town, and the police were snatching all those young people. It was a mess, right? And I saw you standing in between the police and all of these incredibly angry young people, and you were trying to keep peace, trying to negotiate with the police so that they could stop doing that, at least to let them finish hearing the word, at least let them finish actually receiving some wisdom. You want them to stop acting crazy, well, give them something that they can believe in, allow them to intake some information that will provide them with a channel for their rage, for their hurt, in a way that is constructive. And I saw you doing this. There was commotion all over the place, and I see you trying to work the crowd in between the police and these angry folks. I was like, he got to be on my podcast, period.
You were there?
Yeah, I was there.
Wow.
I was a lot of places.
Wow.
I was a lot of places.
Yeah, that was a very, very touchy situation.
That was. I'm really grateful that I experienced what I experienced during that time. It gave me a lot of perspective not just on the climate here in town, both by, you know, the police and white folks and black folks and all the other kind of stuff, but it also showed me that there is nothing you need to be sold out more for than what God has given you. Because people will always have their own agendas, but when you stand on your truth, it makes people have to approach you on your terms. If you're constantly trying to be a part of other people's movement, you'll never truly get your own done. And so now here I am, I'm the first black podcaster to ever be honored as one of the 40 under 40 recipients.
Wow.
The first, you know, podcaster I feel like in general to get that. Like, so I didn't think any of those things before. I just knew I wanted to create a space where people could receive unbiased, undoctored, you know, information, wisdom. That's why I always say real world wisdom, because some stuff you don't know till you out in the field.
Amen.
You
Amen.
can't teach that.
Amen.
You have to been there.
Yeah.
You got to be there to get those kind of insights.
And
that's what I wanted on the podcast. And so what you're doing in your approach to ministry and things like that is that real world wisdom, in my opinion, because when your congregants leave here, they go out into the world. And they gotta be able to apply what you've given them to the world in real time. And I think that's difficult when you don't take a more inclusive approach, when you don't honor your creatives, when you're not honoring the gifts that are in your church, when you're not creating a vision that your congregation, then you just got a whole bunch of people who are in a routine.
I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to ask you a question after this, and we're going to wrap it up here. I had a meeting with 6 very incredible young people in our church, very gifted young people in our church. And I shared with them what I thought God was saying to me about their role in the church, both present and what that looks like in the future. And one of the young ladies went back and told, or said to a friend of hers, he asked her, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about what Pastor said? And she said, I feel like I've been seen. I feel like I've been seen. Now, I've known this young person virtually her entire life. And I heard what she was saying, that at this stage, with everything that I have to offer, I feel like he sees me. I am seen. I want to be surrounded by people like that. I want to be an igniter of that kind of feel.
Yeah.
Those thoughts.
Yeah.
Where people in general, young people now, I don't care if they come, as Dr. DeBoer said, in black velvet, yellow satin, or white silk. I don't care whether black, white, Jewish. I want them to feel like they're seen. I want them to have the thought that they are valued. Now, here's what I ask you. I ask every guest this, and I agree. I know a little bit about you, so you know. But give me 3 things, because there's somebody out there that's going to listen to this, and they hear about your accomplishment. They hear about, you know, podcast awards and leadership that you do, but they don't know the struggle. They don't know the pain. They don't know the scars. If you had 3 things that you could tell them, what would you say? Number 1.
3 things. So 1, you got to be committed. You got to be committed. Nothing great happens without commitment. And your commitment is what will birth your ability to sacrifice. And so that leads me to my second point, is you have to be willing to sacrifice. I don't really watch films and things like that like I used to. I don't really hang out and do stuff like that like I used to, because I gave that time to what I felt like would exist longer than I would. And so I would say, you know, commitment, sacrifice, and then also people. You gotta have the right people around you, people who will pour into you in a way that no one else will. And here's the part about people that can kind of trip you up. If you are not sold out for your own vision, you won't really be able to see the kind of people that are around you. Sometimes the people in your circle are blocking your blessing. They may love you, but they're blocking your blessing. Sometimes the people in your circle, they don't know what else to do with you except keep you small. And sometimes it's out of love, sometimes it's out of jealousy, and then sometimes it's just out of fear that you'll leave them, fear that you'll change, fear that your life is going to eclipse theirs, and they don't want to lose you. And so if you understand that you have to be committed, that you will have to sacrifice, and that you gotta find the right people, and that finding people takes wisdom and it takes time, and you're gonna make mistakes. If you think, I could go on and on about what happened last year to where I'm at this year, and the things that God has done for my life, the extreme lows that I've gone through, and all just to be a part of what I feel like God gave me. It's a constant process. So don't let nobody make you feel bad that you are overwhelmed or over obsessed or overcommitted to what you're doing. Don't let nobody make you feel. They are afraid of you, is what it is. Extremism is only extreme until what you envision becomes a reality, and then it's a normal thing.
Preacher. Preacher, I'm gonna use that one.
It's the truth.
I agree with that. So, history proves that to be true.
That's right.
I mean, you're gonna do what to the right brother? You're gonna do what? And now look, man. Hey, you've been listening to Fit Conversation, fearless, intentional, and transformation conversation. And our guest today has been an extraordinary friend. I call on him daily and pour from him his wisdom and understanding. I thank God for young people like him who are so committed to the church and doing things right and doing it in an excellent way. Kibwe, let's give that address again so that people that want to do podcasts or learn a little more can get you.
Absolutely. So you can go to www.workwithkibwecooper.com and Empower You Podcast for everything else.
Thank you for being a part, bro.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We could have went on another hour.
Yes.
I know. Thank you for being with us as well. May God continue to bless you. May you realize your dream. May you understand, as Kibwe said, the importance of commitment, the importance of sacrifice, and the importance of having the right people in your life. And we pray that this conversation has been the right conversation for you this day. Blessings.